Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. We're your hosts. I'm Theresa Conti.
And I'm Ivana. We talk with people just like you. We have honest conversations about current issues that women and men face and how we pivot to address them in our lives.
This podcast is your companion as you step into a workout or take some time for yourself. Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. We're your hosts. I'm Theresa Conti.
And I'm Ivana Polonio. And here on this podcast, we talk to people just like you and just like us who have experienced pivots in their life. So transitions, those big moments and sometimes smaller moments that leave you feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Here we're going to have some very honest conversations with our guests about issues they have faced. Some of them, this may be the first time talking publicly about what they've experienced and how they walked into the pivot of their life and have had to reestablish their footing. And there will be some lessons learned that you'll be able to apply in your life.
So, Theresa, you said walk into the pivot. So, speaking of that, can you tell us why we call this step into the pivot?
Yeah. For us, as we were talking about this, it was really important to have something short enough where you could get through it during your workout, during your walk, whether that's on the treadmill or outside, or doing some other form of movement or almost like a meditation time, right? Like just something that was short enough, but could really give you some valuable information.
So, let's talk a little bit more about why we're doing this, continuing this, what you were just um, expanding on, the reasons why we're embarking on this special project and go a little deeper into, what really motivated us to do this. And I want to tell a very quick story about our friendship and our connection that really for me exemplifies, what's the intent behind this podcast. And it's, let's say 5 or 6 years ago, I was going through some challenging times in my personal life. It wasn't anything really radical. So it wasn't a massive pivot. There was nothing really, big that I needed to decide on, but there was a brewing, discomfort happening. And I was just not totally sure how to balance my very busy career and career growth in personal life, blended family. So, really raising a son with a partner who was very dedicated, very beloved, you know, situation at home, but lots of management. And I felt very alone in some of the experiences that I was going through. And we were both traveling and we were at an industry event. And there was something about your availability, how you were there with me. We were having breakfast and we were talking shop. But then there was something else. There was just this openness. And I asked you a couple questions about your own personal experiences and shared a little bit without going into story, but shared a little bit about some of my considerations. And your kindness and how you listened, and then the advice that you offered from your personal experiences was so heartwarming and so relaxing. And it really helped. And even though we didn't figure anything out and we didn't, talk steps or actions we were going to take, that connection with you in that moment, someone who really understood and showed me that, I was seen, heard, valued. Immediately, the stress, that weight on the shoulders that I was feeling, it started to lift. So for me, that's the intention behind this podcast. Let's talk about some of the things that really leave us feeling very alone and isolated as women and men in, in our the complexities of our lives, and show each other that you're not alone. There are others who are going through something similar. We are available to hear each other and to lift each other up.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate saying that. That means a lot to me. And, from my standpoint, the same is true, right? Being able to partner with you on this. But, also being able to share some of these really great stories. I mean, I know you have one too, and we're gonna talk about that. And for me, right, I was a woman business owner many years in a very male dominated business, and think I have some valuable things to share, and so will some of our guests. But I think for me, the big one that we're going to talk about is my cancer. I was diagnosed in 2014, and 9 years later, I feel like I'm better than ever. And but we're really going to talk about some of those things that affect us. And like you said, it's not just us, it's a lot of women are going through a lot of different things, and there's a lot of things in their life that they need to deal with, and then have that pivot, right? Figure out what the next piece of it's going to be. So, our first full episode will be next week, and we're going to just talk to each other and talk about our stories and things that we really want others to know about us. And then our guests after that will start being, other people, men and women who are currently or have faced a challenge in their life, how they had to pivot and change something to get through that challenge, how they may have had to rely on others. And sometimes as women, that's a really hard thing, is to rely on others. But I think sharing some of those stories, you'll understand that when you go through something, that there are others out there. So we're going to hear a lot of stories. We're going to hear, like I said, a lot of people may have never talked about this before. And, I think that's such an important piece. And I think there's going to be some tears maybe at times, but I'm hoping there's going to end up being a lot of laughter.
For sure. We do chuckle a lot
We do.
when we chat. And there it is, the transformation. Sometimes it starts with tears and ends in ends in laughter.
Right?
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so we'll do this weekly. The episodes will be released every Friday, and we're flexible. We attunement is really important to us. So depending on what our guests are talking about and where the conversation goes and what we want to really highlight for you, the episodes might vary in length, but generally our approach here is 20 is plenty. And like you were talking about earlier with that, 20-minute walk and 20-minute lunch break where you're stretching and listening to us, or a short drive, there it is. So 20 minutes or less maybe is what we're going for. And again, for the most part, we will have guests, but occasionally we might surprise you with a bonus episode. And you'll definitely want to listen till the end, because at the end of each episode, we will ask our guests the question, for you, how can a pivot be a step forward? Because again, back to that transformation, transmutation, we are noticing the flips from, those, painful bags of lemons that hit us to, it's not just lemonade. I mean, you can make all sorts of stuff.
For
So
sure.
solution oriented, suggestions at the end.
And you're going to hear those from us too during our first episode for sure. And I think it'll be a lot of really great information. So this podcast is really for anybody, for you, right? It's anybody who's really interested in listening to some real stories, learning, growing, figuring out what's good for them, and how they can pivot when something does happen. So please listen. Make sure you don't miss us on our weekly. And we're going to be uplifting, inspiring, motivating, and awesome. I think we're awesome anyway.
Yeah, so the conversation will be happening here in this medium, but also follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and connect with us. Uh, Email us, ping us, and we would love to hear from you. If you have a story that you'd like to share, if you have questions for our guests, if you want to engage in this community that we're building, absolutely, you are welcome. So we really appreciate you and look forward to getting to know each other and our guests better as we show up in your, yeah, headphones on your mic on your speakers
Yeah.
and on your devices next week.
Yep. So join us for our first episode and our continued episodes of Step into the Pivot. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Step Into the Pivot. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation. Remember, life is a series of pivots, and it's in those moments of change that we truly grow.
If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, make sure to check out our websites. You'll find additional resources, behind-the-scenes content, and more details about our incredible guests. We love hearing from listeners, so reach out with your thoughts, questions, or your own pivot stories.
To keep the conversation going, be sure to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram, where we share updates, quotes, and engage with our amazing community.
If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback makes a difference, and it helps us bring you meaningful conversations. We're signing off, reminding you that every pivot is a step forward. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Step Into the Pivot.